welcome to Eric's Chase Grid Talk. And today is the first actual review episode of any race of the 2014 Chase. I'm going to be talking about what happened this Sunday at Chicagoland, the outcomes, the results, and what it means for a lot of these drivers heading down the road as the Chase is officially underway. And several drivers are off to great starts, and several are definitely not off to the starts they were hoping for. And I'm getting some specifics in a second. Really quick, I'm going to be starting off a lot of my episodes this way with some brief announcements for this channel, for my Double E Dud YouTube channel. If you guys watched, I had a NASCAR parody, released it a couple of days ago about the Chase, and I hope if you haven't seen that, please check that out. I think that was a pretty good one. It's an interesting fact, though. I'll tell you guys this. On all my NASCAR parody videos, for the most part, the only exceptions really are the first one I did, the press conference, and the newest one, the Chase one, the episode I did. With the exception of those two episodes, the other ones take a long time to make. That's what makes it so surprising. I know you guys really, it feels like people really have reacted better to the newest one that I just did about the Chase. Like, it feels like it's got a lot more likes, more comments, more views than a lot of my other ones I've been getting. And I was kind of like, well, really? Because I'll be honest, I wrote the script for that whole thing in about 15 minutes during history class. It was after a test. I finished early enough that I was able to work on that a little bit, and I literally wrote the whole thing on front and back on a sheet of notebook paper in 15 minutes. And I filmed it in about 45 minutes, voiced it and everything in about 45 minutes, and then took about 2 hours to edit it. So the overall process took only about 4 hours to make that video, whereas most of my other NASCAR parodies take at least 12 hours of work time, as usual, because it takes maybe an hour to 2 hours to write it. It'll take me another hour to voice it, and then plenty of hours to film and edit, which takes the longest, especially editing. So I found that surprising that this last episode is surprising that you guys like that one so much, because I feel like I really didn't put any effort into it at all. I feel like I rushed the whole thing, and whatever. I mean, it was still funny. I thought it was pretty funny, and I guess you guys did too. I did not like the episode. It was funny to me. It's funny how that works. The guy, it's one of those scenarios of a guy spends 100 hours working on something really hard, makes it look really cool, but everyone hates it, and then he just goes over and spends 5 minutes writing a sentence, and everyone thinks it's the greatest piece of literature ever, or something random like that. So that's completely off topic. Other announcements is DECS Cup Series Season 5, race number 5 is coming from Martinsville, and that'll be up in a couple of days. I'm looking at, I don't know, I might upload it on Thursday. It'll probably be, sorry, not Thursday, because I have the other thing. I'll probably upload it on Friday, even though I'll be done with it probably before that. I just want to wait. I can get ahead. I can start working on some of the other races as well, because I'm overloaded with projects right now. I got these I'm doing twice a week. I got my parodies that I'd like to kind of do still every now and then, even though haven't had that much time for them. I got my Double E Cup Series races, which is kind of one of my main focuses right now. And then I also have a project I'm working on for school, actually, that I've been having to put a lot of effort into the last few days. But enough about all that crap. I know a lot of you guys probably don't care about that, and you guys are really just wanting to sit here and talk about NASCAR and things that happened this week at Chicagoland. The first race of the Chase is over, and surprise, surprise, it's Brad Keselowski and Jeff Gordon leading the field to the checkered flag. Brad Keselowski gets his 5th win of the season, his 2nd in a row now, and just basically established himself as probably the hottest driver right now and possibly the team to beat. Jeff Gordon, though, continued. He's one of the other big favorites, and he had another strong run, obviously. He went out and finished 2nd, led some laps, ran well. Kyle Larson actually finished 3rd. He's not a Chase driver, but he's one that just narrowly missed it, and I feel like he did deserve to be in the Chase, that team did. They went out, led pretty good amount of laps, ran pretty well late, and ended up finishing 3rd. Joey Logano finished 4th, a strong run for him. Kevin Harvick, he led the most laps, I believe, and finished 5th. Had some problems as well. There's a lot of Chase drivers that ran into problems today. I'll get to those guys in a second, but he still managed to get a top 5. I'll go over some of the other guys here in a second, but there's basically your top 5, and the thing you'll notice is that Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, Jeff Gordon, and Brad Keselowski, all 4 of those chasers that finished in the top 5, I'll bet a lot of people have those 5 in their final 4s at the end of this bracket. I would not be surprised. I feel like Keselowski, Gordon, and Kevin Harvick are clearly, at this point, the 3 favorites. Joey Logano, this is definitely a good showing for him. I feel like he didn't really have a dominant car or anything. I really don't know how he snuck into the 4th position. I feel like I just lost sight of him during the race. But top 5 for him obviously proves that he could definitely be a Final Four contender, which I think everyone kind of thought he could be, but weren't 100% sure. This definitely backs up the threat that is Joey Logano. Other big storylines is actually the Joe Gibbs cars, a team that's kind of, a lot of people had a lot of questions heading into the chase. Were they really going to be competitive? They really haven't been that great this year. All 3 of their cars were in the top 10. Even Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch, the pole sitter, led a lot of laps early. Fell back for a while there. He worked his way back up, managed to get a 7th place finish. Denny Hamlin finished 6th. He started in the back, kind of lingered around there for a little while, but eventually made his way up and got his car, slowly made progress on his car as the day went on and ended up finishing 6th. Matt Kenseth, he started in the top 10, ran in the top 10 for most of the day. He spun out coming to pit road at one point, managed to recover though, and managed to at least get a top 10 finish, 10th there. Kurt Busch, not a Joe Gibbs Racing driver. I'll move on now. I'm going to go in. I said I was going to get to drivers that had problems. I was going to go and do that now because that is probably a major storyline. Is everyone talks about it in the past, you have to be perfect in the chase if you want to win the championship. Basically, from race 1, you really can't have any big mishaps if you have any hopes of winning the championship. With this new chase format, you can have not a great race. You can finish 20th and still move on to the next round, especially in these first couple rounds where there's a lot of drivers that move on. I feel like guys like Ryan Newman, who finished 15th, Casey Kane, who finished 13th, a lot of times drivers like that, especially if you're Newman or Kane, who really haven't been that great this year, and they need to be good. In the old chase format, people right now would probably be writing them off and basically be saying, yeah, they just don't have it. It's going to be very hard for them to win this championship or get back into the championship hunt, especially with the way Keselowski and Gordon and Harvick and guys like that are running. But with this new chase format, that 13th and 15th place finishes that those two guys got are still decent compared to what some of the other guys had, some of the other problems other people had. So there's still, with 2 more races to go before this first cutoff, they still, I'd say, have decent chances of advancing. Definitely have to pick it up a little bit if they want to have any hopes by the end of the chase, but at least this one race not being great isn't going to completely rid them of their chances of a championship. So that's one of the cool things about this chase, I guess, is that you don't have to be 100% perfect to win it. You still have to be good. You can't have a DNF. I feel like any DNF is going to really hurt you, unless it's at Talladega, where I'm guessing a few people will have DNFs. I feel like any other race, you really can't have a DNF. And unfortunately, as I'll now finally, sorry, I'm delaying, I'll finally get to the list. I have a list of drivers here and all the problems that they had. These are all chase drivers. 8 chase drivers had notable issues during the race yesterday, and only about really 3 or 4 of them came back at all to have pretty good finishes. You'd be surprised. So we can start here. I have the list. I'll look at first. Eric Almirola is the big one, and I know this is what I was just saying. You really can't have a DNF if you want to continue to advance, and especially if you're a team like Eric Almirola, who really isn't that big of a team, isn't that consistently good of a team. They blew an engine pretty late in the race yesterday, and they ended up finishing way back, if I'm not mistaken, in 41st, I believe. Yeah, 41st. And that basically all but eliminates their chances, I'd say, from winning the championship or moving on. I mean, they definitely have a shot, especially since a lot of these other guys had some issues as well. But in the end, it's going to be really difficult now for them, especially given that they aren't the strongest race team. They're not the Jimmy Johnson or the Brad Keselowski, who I think can go out and get top 5s these next 2 weeks. I really don't think they will. And it's tough for Eric Almirola. I'd say most people probably thought he would get eliminated in the first round, but I didn't think I don't think we predicted he'd have a blown motor and just the things like that are kind of out of your control, especially the driver's control. They're really not in his control, and it's just a tough break for him. So that's one of the issues that chasers had that they did not come back from. Carl Edwards, and I'm going to tie this into Roush Fenway as a whole. Greg Biffle didn't really have a problem. Well, his problem was that he was just terrible. The Roush Fenway drivers, 2 of them are in the chase, Carl Edwards and Greg Biffle. And they finished 20th and 23rd. Now, Carl Edwards did have a blown tire at one point, had a flat tire that he had to come and pit for, and that put him back in the pack. But, yeah, I mean, just the Roush Fenway drivers, what basically we can take away from what happened Sunday is that Roush Fenway definitely is just not where they need to be as an organization right now, especially not if they want to be serious championship threats like they used to be, and I think still have the potential to be. I mean, like I said a couple weeks ago, or last week, losing Carl Edwards next year is going to hurt them. They're going to be stuck with Trevor Bayne, Ricky Stenhouse, Greg Biffle leading that stable. And, I mean, just think a couple of years ago they had a really strong-looking team with guys like they had David Reagan, Greg Biffle, Carl Edwards, and Matt Kenseth on that team, and they were a threat to win races every week. They just aren't that anymore. They're not even really threats for top 5s anymore, top 10s even. I mean, Greg Biffle, this is the second week in a row he's just had a 20th place car, and if you want to be a championship contender or even a good, like a solid threat, you just can't do that. And if guys like Carl Edwards are doing that even more, and I mean, not nothing against Biffle, but I feel like Edwards is held to a slightly higher standard because he's been closer to championships before. I think people think he should be able to win it. I feel like people are surprised he hasn't won a championship yet. And when guys like Carl Edwards are also having 20th place runs and just not running well, having tire issues, which I know is kind of out of their control, but having things like this happen to him are just unacceptable if you want to win the championship. And it's a tough day for the Roush Fenway guys. Other guys that had problems in the race, I mentioned Almirola and Edwards. Brad Keselowski, he won the race, but he had to pit pretty late in the race, lap 183 out of 267, so less than 90 laps to go at this point. He had to pit a second time under caution because they left a lug nut off one of his tires, and he had to restart 16th, basically lost the lead, went back to 16th, and that's kind of what I thought made part of his win yesterday so impressive, is that he drove in less than 90 laps. I mean, yeah, he had a couple good cautions and good restarts that helped him out, but, I mean, when you drive from 16th up to 1st in that amount of time, without really doing anything on pit road, it was mostly restarts and just having a good car. That's impressive, and that definitely might be something to think about when you consider him for the championship. Matt Kenseth was also had a problem today, another chaser. He spun out, like I said, entering pit road about halfway through the race, a little past halfway. Kenseth had a decent run for most of the day yesterday. He started 5th, got up, worked his way up to 2nd at one point, but for the most part hung around 8th or 7th or 8th for most of the race until this happened. That knocked him back. He managed to drive back up to a 10th place finish, but you could just tell that he definitely wasn't. He along with, I'd say, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jimmy Johnson, who also finished around that same area, none of them were real happy with their result, and definitely feel like they left a little bit out there. Ryan Newman, he had a problem early as well, pretty early in the race. He blew a tire as well. Had a couple of guys with tire issues. Ryan Newman ended up finishing 15th, so he did a pretty good job of recovering. They were another one. They were running up front, looked pretty good early in the race, and then they had this problem, put them a lap down actually. But they did a good job of rallying from a lap down, and still at least got a top 15 finish to keep them, in the hunt. I guess they're not eliminated by any means now. They still have, they're still fighting it. They still have fight left in them for the next 2 weeks. Kevin Harvick, who also got top 5. He also, similar to Keselowski, had to make a second pit stop under a caution. His was much earlier in the race, however, so he had plenty of time to recover. He had a loose left rear tire. He had to pit for that and recover. He did a good job. Obviously, Harvick had one of the best cars. He led the most laps, so no surprise that he was able to still get a top 5. Casey Kane had some pit road speeding penalties that put him back. Kane was just a guy. He just didn't have as strong a car as I feel like he needed to have in a lot of ways. He just, the Hendrick drivers, I'll be honest, really, other than Jeff Gordon, really did not show up. I'm looking at the lineup right here. Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jimmy Johnson, and Casey Kane finished 11th, 12th, and 13th. And I don't know, when you're in the chase and you're Team Hendrick, when Jimmy Johnson's finishing 12th, you got something to worry about because he's supposed to be in the top 5. Kurt Busch is the other guy. He spun out as also similar to Kenseth. He spun out entering pit road as well, but he was also able to recover in basically a similar fashion as Kenseth. He ended up finishing 8th. So a strong run for Kurt Busch, who I have being eliminated in the first round. But he did a good job. Of all the guys, I feel like I'm pretty proud of myself because I picked Almirola, Biffle, Allmendinger, and Kurt Busch to be eliminated in the first round. And Biffle and Allmendinger finished 23rd and 22nd. Almirola finished 41st. And the only guy that messed me up there was Kurt Busch finishing 8th. So darn you, Kurt. But no, I don't mean that. I don't mean it like that. I like Kurt Busch enough that I'm fine with him getting a top 10. I don't care. He'll probably wreck next week. So 8th place finish for Kurt Busch, so a good run for him. And I have, if you look at the point standings right now, because obviously the point standings, you'd think, oh, well, they're stacked up with however they finish. Like if you were the 7th highest chase driver, you're 7th in points, right? Well, no, that's not necessarily correct because obviously, as we knew, a lot of guys came in with bonus points. We had a bunch of guys with 3 wins. We had Keselowski had 4 wins, so that gave him 12 bonus points. You saw guys like Logano, Junior, Johnson, they came in with 9 bonus points already, and so on, so on. So you look at it, obviously Aric Almirola is at the bottom of the bottom, so a tough break for him. Right now, who we have getting eliminated in the first round, would be Ryan Newman, AJ Allmendinger, Greg Biffle, and Eric Almirola. Those would be the 4 that'd be out at this point. Carl Edwards, though, is right on that bubble. Like I said, Edwards didn't have a very good run, but he at least had some bonus points, so it didn't. So he was that would be all that saved him at this point. What I have to say though is after race 1, I guess if I had to say like guys that are safe at this point that I feel like they're probably okay. I think they'll make it to the next round, and then guys that are kind of on the bubble. I think obviously Brad Keselowski has secured a spot in the next round with the win. Winning the race ensures you a berth into the next round. Jeff Gordon, I think just the speed he showed today, unless something catastrophic happens, I think he's pretty safe. I feel like Joey Logano and Kevin Harvick are in kind of a similar boat as Jeff Gordon. Maybe not quite as safe, but I guess, after 1 week, nobody's really 100% safe. We still got 2 more races to go. And New Hampshire and Dover, they're not short tracks, but they're not super speedways. So short tracks are definitely a lot of bumping. Anything could happen. Guys that I'd say are on the bubble is really everyone else. I mean, Dale Earnhardt Jr. is 5th in points, but he didn't show a whole lot of speed at Chicagoland, and he's kind of been inconsistent the last few weeks leading up to the chase. So we'll see if they can show up and recover. You got Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch from the Gibbs stables. They're 6th and 7th in points, and that's actually where they finished in the race. So that's weird. Both of them had good runs, and they needed it. Like I said, Joe Gibbs Racing needed Chicagoland to maybe pick them up and have them be better than they were kind of for a lot of the regular season. And I feel like though none of them really dominated the race, Busch led some laps early, but other than that, neither either them or Kenseth really did anything that spectacular in the race. But I think they still established themselves as a formidable team that can advance to at least through at least the first or second rounds maybe, and possibly get a sneaky guy into that Final Four. So, I mean, it was still a solid showing for them. Maybe not quite what they were going for, but still pretty good. Jimmy Johnson, he's the other guy I want to talk about really quick. Everyone says Jimmy Johnson's been inconsistent and really had the month of July and August was not kind, for the most part, to Jimmy Johnson at all. He had some of the worst finishes, some of the worst stretches probably of his career during that time. A lot of it wasn't really the car's fault. It was more just circumstances, getting caught up in wrecks, things like that. But a lot of people thought, he did this last year. He'll just turn it around the moment the chase starts. And yeah, sure enough, he did. He went out and got a couple of top 5s, ended up winning a couple of races, and obviously went on to win his 6th championship. So people came in this year thinking, Jimmy's not at the top of his game. And me included, I was like, Jimmy's not on the top of his game. But unlike last year, which I think a lot of people did, a lot of people kind of counted Jimmy out last year, kind of thought, he's just not quite where he needs to be. I don't think they're really going to be a threat for the championship. I feel like they had a similar option coming in this year, but I feel like this year, instead of counting him out, a lot of people kind of decided to say, no, I think Jimmy Johnson's going to turn it around like he did last year. I think people expected Johnson to come back out here at Chicagoland and have one of the best cars and possibly win the race. That was far from the truth. Now, that's not to say Jimmy Johnson had a bad day. I think he had a lousy couple of restarts towards the end of the race. That's what ended up hurting his finishing position. He ended up finishing 12th, even though he ran in the top 10, top 5 for pretty much the whole day. But even that being said, obviously their car was not a winning car. He didn't lead any laps. He really wasn't a front runner at all. And a 12th place finish, like I said before, that's not a Jimmy Johnson chase finish at a track like this. The only way Johnson's going to finish 10th or worse in a chase race is if he gets wrecked, and that did not happen this week. So definitely a little bit of concern on that 48 team. They may just not quite be as good as people think they are, but who knows? I guess I'm talk about how I try to end these at about 20 minutes. I'm pretty close to 20 minutes. I'd say this is a pretty good stopping point. I guess I'll wrap it up then. All right, we got I said I was gonna. I told you guys I wasn't gonna answer questions this week. I'll do that on my Thursday show. So now's your chance. I saw you guys posted a few comments on my last video from last Thursday. I'll try to go back and look at some of those, but just in case, if you really want me to answer something, go ahead and post it again, or just leave a comment on this video right here, and I'll hopefully get to it, and I'll answer it on Thursday, and I'll talk about whatever you guys want me to talk about. Maybe something exciting will happen this week. Maybe I don't know. I might have to talk about Marcos Ambrose. He's leaving Richard Petty Motorsports after this year. They announced that a few days ago. But they also announced that he's going to be driving V8 supercars for Roger Penske. So maybe I could get into that a little bit. Something, just whatever storylines there may be. So go ahead and leave a comment. And I appreciate you guys watching / listening to these. I know I don't really, like I said in the first episode, I don't expect you to just sit here and, oh, that's my phone again. Alright, well, this is probably a good stopping point. Like I said, do not sit there and just listen or stare at this black screen. I'd much rather that you, I'd much rather you, do something while you're listening to this episode instead of just staring at your black screen like a creepy old dude that your parents would probably just walk in and be like, why are you staring at a boring screen for so long? It's been 20 minutes, come eat your dinner. I don't want your parents to say that. I doubt they would, and I doubt they'd have such a weird accent, especially if you live in America and it's just, nobody talks like this. I'm probably offending someone. I should probably get off now. I gotta go freaking feed my dog before she eats my couch again. Alright, well, I'll see you guys on Thursday. Adios.